India's UPI is set to go global, which is excellent news for non-residential Indians and those living outside of India, as they will be able to transfer money using UPI. However, India is also working on another strategy in the background. The country has an action plan that aims to internationalize not just UPI, but the Indian rupee itself. Today, the Indian rupee needs a transformation to become a global currency. In this video, we will break down the complex idea of how a currency becomes international, so please share it with your friends if you find it useful. Chapter 1. The significance of an international currency. Recently, during my trip to Egypt, I found myself short of Egyptian pounds to pay the taxi driver. However, to my surprise, he was willing to accept US dollars instead. This wasn't an isolated incident, as many shops in Egypt were also open to accepting payment in US dollars. But why is this the case? The answer lies in the fact that many countries prefer using a currency that holds value outside of their own borders, and the US dollar fits that bill perfectly. In the past, there was no concept of currency and people relied on bartering to exchange goods and services. However, this system had limitations and hence, currencies were introduced. The value of a currency lies in the trust people have in it. When we exchange a piece of paper with someone, we are not just exchanging the paper, but also our trust in that currency. But what gives a currency value? The answer is simple: trust. The more people trust a currency, the more valuable it becomes. If we take the example of India buying tea from Sri Lanka buying sugar from China, and India paying Sri Lanka in a currency that China will accept later, this ensures that the currency remains valuable as it is trusted by multiple countries. Historically, the British pound was an international currency due to colonization in world trade. However, after the Bretton Woods Agreement in 1944, the US dollar became the standard international currency. In 1973, the US convinced OPEC countries to accept payment in dollars, solidifying the US dollar's position as a superpower currency. Today, the US dollar, euro, Japanese yen, British pound, and Chinese yuan are all considered international currencies, as they hold value outside of their own countries. Chapter 2. The case for an international rupee. As you may have heard in the news, India's foreign exchange reserves have hit an all-time low. When the value of the dollar increases, the Reserve Bank of India, RBI, sells dollars from its reserves to increase supply and lower the exchange rate. In 2022, the RBI spent over $40 billion to stabilize the value of the rupee. However, the reality is that India is currently a net importer, meaning that our imports far outweigh our exports. As a result, we have to pay for all of these imports in dollars, resulting in a trade deficit. In October alone, India's trade deficit was $26.91 billion. Unfortunately, India's imports are unlikely to decrease in the future, meaning that the value of the dollar will only continue to rise. But there is still hope. Chapter 3. Prospects for the Indian rupee. After analyzing trade data from the past few years, I have some hopeful news to share. India's exports exceed its imports with 154 countries. However, convincing countries like China to trade in rupees is unlikely to succeed, but countries like Bangladesh and Sri Lanka are more open to the idea. Sri Lanka has already agreed to trade with India in rupees, benefiting both nations. For countries like Sri Lanka that lack dollars, paying in rupees is cheaper. Similarly, after the United States imposed sanctions on Russia, Sri Lankan rupee fell by 84% compared to the dollar, but only by 70% compared to the Indian rupee, making it cheaper to buy rupees than dollars. The US government regulates and controls every dollar spent outside the country. As a result, Russia started trading with China in yuan, and trade between Russia and China has increased after the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. In Russia's case, trading with India in rupees is a possibility. If the rupee becomes an international currency, India will benefit significantly, as will countries like Sri Lanka and Russia that cannot trade in dollars. To understand how trade currently operates, let's consider the example of an Indian car dealer, B, who imports cars from a French dealer, A. When making payment, B goes to an Indian bank with rupees, which are converted to euros and then paid to the foreign bank. The foreign bank then transfers euros to the French dealer, and the cars are shipped to India. However, the Reserve Bank of India, RBI, has launched a special Vostro account system that enables foreign banks to open Indian Rupee accounts for trade. If France opens a Vostro account with SBI, Indian dealers importing cars from France can pay in rupees directly to SBI, and French exporters can spend their rupees from their Vostro account on Indian exporters, resulting in Indian exporters getting paid in rupees only. This system will keep Indian money within India. There are 35 countries that are willing to trade in rupees. If India can convince more countries to adopt the Vostro account system, it will be a massive win for India in the coming decade. While it may be challenging to convince some countries to trade in rupees, India's prospects for the rupee remain promising. Chapter 4: Overcoming the Hurdle. Achieving buy-in from nations like Russia and Sri Lanka is a plausible feat, and efforts are underway to make this a reality. However, persuading Saudi Arabia and the UAE poses a significant challenge. This is because, over the course of a fiscal year, there is a surplus of $12 billion in trade between the UAE and India, and $20 billion between Saudi Arabia and India. To put it simply, we sold them tomatoes, and they sold us wheat. Yet, despite this exchange, we continue to purchase wheat worth $12 billion and $20 billion from them, respectively. Presently, these payments are made in US dollars, which can be used anywhere, invested elsewhere, or used to buy assets from other countries. However, if this surplus were in Indian rupees, what use would it have for them? This presents a colossal challenge for India that the Reserve Bank of India and the government must tackle through significant policy changes, reducing our trade deficit, and augmenting our exports. Additionally, we must explore other avenues for utilizing the rupee, such as incentivizing foreign investors to make investments in India using rupees. Although this is a complex subject, we will delve into it further in another video. Chapter 5: The Complexity of Execution. If all the solutions to India's economic challenges could be explained in a brief 5 to 10 minute video, why hasn't anything been done yet? The answer is simple. Talking is easy, but executing those ideas is exceedingly difficult. For instance, China has been attempting to address similar issues since 2009, and to date, it has only managed to reduce US dollar shares by 2%. This underscores the enormity of the task at hand, as the US dollar is not merely a currency, but also a weapon, as its dominance is unparalleled. How each US dollar can be spent across the globe is controlled by the US Federal Reserve, America's central bank. If the US were to impose sanctions on India tomorrow, we would be unable to purchase oil in dollars, which would lead to further increases in oil prices. To pay other nations in dollars, we would have to purchase even more dollars. At present, the dollar is valued at 82 rupees, and experts predict that this number could rise to between 90 and 100. If India fails to take the appropriate measures promptly, we may commit a significant blunder. If you found this video informative and learned something new, please share it with your friends, as the world is currently facing an economic crisis that began in 2020. India's economy, like those of Pakistan and Sri Lanka, is also under pressure, and it remains to be seen whether this will make us stronger or weaker. Only time will tell, but sharing this crucial message with you is important to me.